Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the debut record from Black Void, Antithesis, out May 27th on Nuclear Blast. The album has 9 tracks, 39 minutes in length, and they are a Norwegian punk black metal band led by none other than Lars Nidland of Borknagar and White Void. This is actually the other side of the coin. Think about Jekyll and Hyde, and Jekyll and Hyde would become White Void and Black Void. This is the darker side of the other project. Now, as far as the design is concerned, this album is put together like a set list from a band that has a very small amount of time to perform. There's no time to talk to the audience, there's no breaks, there's no reprieves. It's just play your songs, get them all in there, and allow you to feel like you got the most out of the record in the shortest amount possible. 39 minutes in length, in my opinion, is absolutely perfect for an album that feels this way, that sounds this way. There's also a great sense of continuity. I'm not saying that the songs interact with one another in terms of bleeding from one to the next. That's not the case on this record, but you always feel like the album is pushing you forward. It's never letting you lose contact or lose connection with the path that you're currently on. All of these elements allow for the playability of the record to increase. It allows you to stay connected with the album, making also the album a little bit easier to digest, a little bit easier to understand, and therefore you are able to appreciate a lot more all the little details, all the little intricacies that this record is going to offer. As far as the soundscape is concerned, I was surprised. I wanted this album to be dark, and I was expecting this album to be dark. But I was also expecting the soundscape to be a little bit murky, to be very gritty, very dirty, very old school black metal, and perhaps lose a little bit of its shape. When you look at White Void, for example, those songs, that record had very defined purpose within the songs and within the overall construction of the album. And I was expecting this record to be very chaotic from that perspective. And it isn't. There is grit on this record, there is dirt on this record, and you feel that in the production, specifically coming out of the vocals. But when you look at the sound is driven, but the sound is not necessarily gritty. You can still see the shapes of the songs, you can still see the construction, the definitions that the tracks have, and you're able to digest all the different elements that went into making these specific tracks. So this to me was a surprise. They were able to make this album sound punk, feel black metal, be dark, be gritty, but with better defined, better quality sound approach all around. And that stays very balanced and very constant from beginning to end. There's a lot of volatility on this record, but the quality of approach and the quality of execution, that stays very together, that stays very cohesive across all 9 songs. Now within that sound, you have the drums and guitars giving you the brunt force of everything that you're going to experience. The drums on this record are not overpowering, and I wasn't expecting them to be overpowering, but there are some moments where they jump into the forefront and they do pack quite a bit of heaviness and thickness and allow the overall sound to be a little bit more robust, to feel slightly bigger. This makes some tracks feel like they're expanding and contracting, which also creates movement, which makes the songs more dynamic and more interesting. So the drums have a very interesting approach all around, because it's not a one-size-fits-all from the first to the last track. They rather morph, grow, expand, move, depending on what the song calls, depending on what the demands are within each and every single track. But overall, the one thing that they have in common is that the drums on this album really ground the record. They are the foundation, they are the pillars of the sound of the record. Then you have the guitars. I love the guitar tones, I love the guitar sounds. I mean, there's a lot of rock and roll on this album. If you look at White Void is perhaps the brighter side of rock and roll, and this album is definitely the darker side of rock and roll. It definitely sounds punk, it definitely sounds black metal, but at the beginning, at the root of that sound is pure rock and roll, and this album has tons of that. Great guitar riffs, great melodies, a very impactful album from that perspective. There's a lot of things for you to hold on to when you're listening to this record, but definitely you're going to walk away from this album impressed with the quality of the guitar sound and the quality of the execution. It's just a fun album to listen to. If you're a fan of guitar playing, this album really hits the mark, because it gives you darkness in those guitars, it gives you slight grit, but still great melody and great shapes. You can really feel how the warmth of that guitar sound comes forward and hits the tracks and creates atmosphere, creates a vibe that allows the songs to have a little bit more life, to feel a little bit more emotional even. Now, as far as vocals are concerned, Lars is a phenomenal vocalist, and I love that they went with some clean vocals on this record. I was expecting the album to be very grunty, with some raspiness in the voice, because you want to bring that punk intensity, that punk aggression, and you also want to bring that black metal darkness to it. So when you're merging those two worlds together, you tend to have a little bit more of a direct vocal approach, and you tend to use a little bit of harsher, darker sounding vocals. And that's exactly what you're going to get for the majority of the experience on this album, but you're also going to get some clean vocals. And I feel like the clean vocals on this record break the monotony. They kind of give you a sense of having something different for you to appreciate, something different for you to listen to. It gives the songs a little bit more of depth vocally, because musically there's so much movement in them, and you need something similar vocally in order for that movement to be uniform across all the different elements. So adding those clean vocals here and there really jumps out and makes the album feel a lot more complete from that perspective. But great vocal performance from start to finish. And when you get to the end of the album, you look back and you listen to White Void, you come into Black Void, you listen to this record, and if you're a fan of Borknagar, I think the conclusion at the end is simple. There's nothing that Lars touches that doesn't turn to gold. I mean, this guy can do no wrong. He has Borknagar, has White Void, which is more of a clean rock, bright sounding experience, and then he goes punk black metal on this one. I mean, what can he do? This guy can do everything. It's absolutely phenomenal. The ideas that he has, the way he processes, the way he creates, it really allows you to see the full spectrum of the genius that he is as a musician. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Tenebrism of Life. This song is phenomenal. It's a rock guitar sounding track from start to finish. It obviously brings darkness. The vocals define the experience of the track. They define the mood and even the atmosphere. And then the guitars really spark the existence within the track. They are that fuel that just lights up that fire. Is just absolutely incredible. The guitar sound on this track really drives home. It really stays with you. It's memorable. It's a very dynamic track. Tons of ups and downs, incredible ebbs and flows. It's an absolute roller coaster ride of a song, and I feel like it's one of those tracks that has a lot more to offer than what you're going to get at first glance. I've listened to this song multiple times, and I feel like there are some synths as an underlying layer within the overall soundscape that impacts the atmosphere and the melody that the track has, but they're really hidden, so it's kind of hard to tell if they're really there or they're not there. So it's such an interesting track because there's so many layers, there's so much texture, and you keep coming back to it because you try to break it apart, but sometimes it gets really hard to break it apart. So such an interesting song from that perspective. Then you have No Right, No Wrong. The guitars lead the way. From the beginning, the guitars are just leading the way. Overall, you can feel the power in the layers. This is a song that also has layers, but the layers are not as driven. The layers are not as thin. The layers have a little bit more volume, and therefore they have more thickness and power to them. You can hear them in the drums, for example. The drums on this track at times are a lot more powerful than what you're going to get throughout the entire record. They just have a lot more heaviness. They have a lot more sound to them. Now, it's a very energetic track. It has great energy, feels really good. You have the clean vocals mixed into the overall atmosphere. It gives the listener a change of perspective, and that's really important to make the song feel even more volatile, even more dynamic. And it's a track that never stays stagnant. It's constantly evolving. It's constantly morphing. Last but not least, Explode into Nothingness. This is my favorite song on the album. First of all, I love the guitar tone. I love the guitar sound. I could listen to this song on loop, just instrumental, just guitars. I just love the warmth of this guitar sound. It feels warm, but in that warmth, there's a ton of darkness. It's bleak, it's pitch black, but it's so welcoming. Such a great, dark, melancholic, melodic sound that the guitars have throughout this entire song. Morphing, weaving, adding, taking it away, but the movement is there. That's undeniable, but that core sound that they have is just phenomenal. From start to finish, it really becomes tattooed in your brain, and that is the one element that you're going to walk away with, is how the guitar sound came across, how it made you feel throughout this entire track. It's a track that has also great vocal performance in it. The vocals become a little bit of a result of the sound. They go where the sound is going, so it's not one size fits all. It's really morphing, is evolving, is matching the atmosphere, and the vocals are able to capture that atmosphere and make it even more noticeable. you're able to not just hear the atmosphere, but you're able to experience the atmosphere through the sound and through the vocals. Incredibly crafted song, musically, vocally, and lyrically from start to finish. This is at Black Void Antithesis out May 27th on Nuclear Blast. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below and hit me up. I'll see you guys at the next video.